Hello, and welcome to Catholicism in the Car. My name is Parker Zerbal. Okay, so last time we left off talking about dulia, hyperdulia, and latria, and those distinctions there between a type of prayer that's honored to those in heaven, and then so that's dulia, hyperdulia, which is honored to Mary, and then latria, which is that sort of prayer or worship, properly speaking, that is due only to God. And so, since the Eucharist, we believe, is God, is Jesus Christ, truly, really, and sacramentally present, then that form of prayer that we would give the Eucharist is latria. And I feel like I keep coming back to this. If the Catholic Church wants to be a vehicle for salvation, for the salvation of the world, it needs to be authentically itself. If the Catholic Church tries to be anything other than what it is, if it tries to accommodate teaching or practice to the world, it will ultimately find itself bankrupt. And we've seen this. At least in Western culture, that as soon as the Catholic Church tried to be something more, quote-unquote, relevant to the culture, it immediately lost its relevance. Because, I mean, think about it. If I can get a rock concert or even just, some decent, pop music at a bar with somebody that has lots of sound equipment and, I got some booze with me and you got the whole feel of everything, or even a concert hall, let's say. Whoa. Sorry, I almost, there was an Amish buggy switched lanes right in front of me, and I was not expecting that, so I had to abruptly hit the brakes. The Amish guy driving, looked back at me with really wide eyes because I don't think he saw me. Yeah, that was close. The horse, I think, definitely freaked out a little bit because it was being told to go in a direction that it didn't want to go. It was like, there's a car there. Anyway, that could have been a lot worse. I could have had a horse through my windshield. That would not have been fun. Okay, I kind of lost my train of thought. Yeah, so I can go to a bar or a concert hall and get some great music, great atmosphere. But as soon as that music tries to be replicated in church, I don't know. Why would I go to church if I can get the same thing somewhere else? Yeah, I don't know. And I haven't seen it become effective, at least in Western culture. And a lot of people will say that, it's just that people aren't as interested in religion anymore. And to a certain extent that's true, but there have been multiple Pew studies that have shown that most people who leave the Catholic Church end up becoming Pentecostal Christians or evangelicals, at least in the American context. I'm not sure about the European context. So, at least in America, it's not that the culture is turning people into atheists. It's that they kind of see, they're like, well, why would I go to a Catholic mass that has polka music or some really cheesy type of music that sounds like My Little Pony. When, I could go to the Protestant church down the street where it's actually more like a rock concert. And keep in mind, I mean, these people have no concept generally of what the Eucharist is, and that's a very sad state of affairs that we haven't catechized well. But it's not just teaching. It's not just teaching, okay? It's how do we act towards the Eucharist? What does our Sunday liturgy, which is where 95% of Catholics get their understanding of what the faith is, how does our Sunday liturgy convey that we should be reverent towards the Eucharist? Do people, when they go up for communion, do they go up with fear and trembling, in awe of God Almighty before them? Or do they take the Eucharist, do they take Jesus Christ in the Eucharist for granted? Do they take him for granted? And I was just talking to the pastor of my church about this morning. He gave a great homily this morning on the Eucharist. And we have just seen people, and honestly, maybe they were taught it in RCIA, or not RCIA, possibly RCIA, but CCD or in Catholic school. But it's not just teaching. It's not just the formal catechesis that happens in a classroom or lecture type setting. It's it's much more importantly, the teaching of every Sunday when I go to Mass. Are people acting reverently toward the Eucharist? Or is it that I walk into Mass, everybody's talking, and the bell rings, and Father comes out, and we say Mass, and then afterwards everybody's talking in the presence of our Lord after they've received, and there's no sense of that, something magnificent has happened to me here, that I have, in a very real sense, in a sacramental sense, become deified at Mass. When you receive communion in a qualified sense, you become deified. You become one with God. Do people see that when they come to church? Or do they just see, oh, it's a great community, and yay, we're all happy together? Or is it, is there something more? Community is important, don't get me wrong. Community is very important. We need to foster community. But community doesn't come over worship. Community is not above worship. Worship is first. Worship of God is primary. Secondly comes the family. And inherent in that would be the parish family, the community that's formed. So many parishes have tried to become, quote unquote, relevant by becoming like the Protestant church down the street. And it doesn't work. We're not going to be, we can't do Protestantism better than the Protestants, okay? And we don't want to, because there are certain things that we still need to hold on to as Catholics, at least in teaching, if not in practice. And they're not going to jive well with what the Protestants do, because they're on a completely different frame of mind, frame of reference, as regards what happens at Sunday worship. I mean, most of the Protestants are on a completely different frame of mind. You have your Anglo-Catholics and your Missouri Synod Lutherans out there that are quite similar, and in a lot of ways do liturgy better than we do. I mean, for goodness sake, the Missouri Synod, a number of the Missouri Synod churches that are in my area celebrate their service at Orientum, and they use more Latin than we do. I mean, my goodness, we're being outdone in liturgy by the Lutherans. I mean, God bless them. God bless them. They're holding on to their patronage. At least the Missouri Synod ones are that I know. They're holding on to their patronage. They still believe that the Mass is a sacrifice. That it's the one sacrifice made present again now. They still believe in the real presence. And they don't even have valid sacraments according to the Catholic Church. And we're over here just la-di-da-di-da, people are going to probably get really offended by what I'm saying in this episode. Catholics will. Because, yeah, if you're offended, I apologize. But I'm part of the reason of having a podcast is that you can speak what you're seeing and what it appears to me to be manifestly true. So if you disagree with me, we can have a conversation about that. I'd be glad to. Feel free to email me. but my goodness, there are so many, and there's a lot of parishes that are trying to reclaim Catholic culture. A lot of the traditional parishes do this. The Latin Mass communities do this quite well. But then there are also quite a decent number of Novus Ordo parishes that are trying to reclaim this as well. We have one near me that I think is doing this exceptionally well. They do Ad Orientem masses, I think, at least twice a week. They've incorporated much more Latin. Their music is actually Catholic, and not, Protestant music that was created by Catholics. There's a scene in the Mass of the Ages videos, and I did kind of a review of that a few episodes back. You can see my brief opinions of it there. But there's a scene in the second episode, I believe, where they compare certain commonly known church hymns that have popped up over the last 50 years in Catholic circles, and they compare them to the theme song of My Little Pony, and I forget what some of the other ones were, but some of these songs, they're in the exact same key and in the exact same mode as a My Little Pony or another children's theme song. And we think this is attractive to people. We're all around, it's we're all around the campfire singing Kumbaya, and except, it's actually the holy sacrifice of the Mass and the Eucharist. My goodness. And I get it. I mean, there's certain cultures where the Novus Ordo has been done really well, and it's actually borne a lot of fruit. I'm thinking particularly of Africa. In Africa, the Novus Ordo has borne a lot of fruit because they've been able to actually do it quite reverently, according to their cultural standards, right? But in the West, there's nothing reverent about music that sounds like the theme song for a children's TV show. There's nothing reverent. There's nothing awe-inspiring about it. There's nothing sacred about it. If the music makes you want to get up and dance like a 5-year-old, you can. That music is not appropriate for liturgy. Okay. There's a very big difference between dancing to the theme song of My Little Pony and what happens in many African communities. There's actually a lot of African communities that are quite traditional in their outlook because they kind of have a lot of. They're still holding on to a lot of what, say, Archbishop Lefebvre, he was a missionary in Africa before Vatican II, and I believe a little bit afterwards as well. He started the St. Pius X Society, the Society of St. Pius X, which is a quasi-schismatic. I think officially now they're in a irregular state of union with the Church. It's kind of interesting. Anyway. But they're a Latin Mass society. I think, at least for the most part, I think they deny the validity of the Second Vatican Council. If they don't do that, I know they, for the most part, deny the Novus Ordo liturgy as being efficacious. So. But there are still a lot of areas of African culture that are very traditional. But the ones that aren't, that are more of a Novus Ordo type, they do it very traditionally according to their culture. Now the way that the Novus Ordo has been done in American culture particularly is not traditional according to our culture. it's done in a 1970s, late 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s style. And honestly, if I heard somebody say this once, if a 15-year-old boy comes to your mass and the music is going to make him squirm in his seat because it sounds like a child's TV show, you should be rethinking how you do your liturgy. Okay? And it's not just the music. The music does play a pretty large part, I would argue. And there's a reason why in Sacrosanctum Concilium, which is the Second Vatican Council's document on the liturgy, it says clearly that Gregorian chant is to be retained as the primary use of liturgical music for the church, even after the council. So, Gregorian chant is on the books. It's still the what we should be using primarily as liturgical music. Second to that, the document says, is polyphony. So, but when was the last time that you heard Gregorian chant or polyphony at a mass? I mean, most masses it's fairly rare. I've heard some recently, but I think that's because I try to go to masses that are more reverent, and it is becoming more and more popular. What I'm saying here is we need to reclaim Catholic culture. We need to reclaim Catholic culture. We can't keep trying to assimilate ourselves to other people's culture. We can't be Protestants better than the Protestants, and we don't want to be. We can't be secular Americans better than secular Americans, and we don't want to be. We need to reclaim what it means to have Catholic culture, and this includes reviving the use of what Catholic culture created, namely Gregorian chant, polyphony, so many other things. We need to reinstitute Vespers services or Lauds services. We need to reinstitute the saying of those main hours of the Liturgy of the Hours in our parishes. I mean, priests say it anyway, every day. What's to stop them from saying morning prayer after their morning mass or before it with the congregation? Sorry, I had some ducks blocking the road. So I had to go slowly so I didn't run them over. I was honking at them. We really do. We need to reclaim Catholic culture. And primarily, that occurs in the liturgy. All right, thanks. Oh, real quick, please feel free to subscribe to any of my podcasts on any of the podcast players. Find me on YouTube. Please subscribe. Like me on Facebook, like the Catholicism Car channel on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're all there. Catholicism Car. And then I also have a Patreon account if you wish to support what I do at this podcast and this YouTube channel. And you can also support us on Anchor.fm. There's a support button there you click on. I also have links to all this on my website's support page at www.catholicisminthecar.com.